Hello, welcome to Philosophy Roulette number 181. I'm going to try something a little different today. I'm trying to experiment with the format here because, oh, no wonder I look so funky. I've got the wrong camera going. Let's see what the problem is here. Oh dear. There we go. Sorry about that. I'm sure everyone was real worried about that 10 seconds. I'm going to try to read something slightly different. I got Kafka's Zurau Aphorisms here. Maybe read some aphorisms, which I'm very apprehensive about, not because I have anything against aphorisms or how people write like in aphorisms, but I'm just trying to shorten the what's being discussed. I want to see if more rapid fire philosophy works better, because most of the times philosophy is such a long form thing that I think it gets a little hard for this sort of video format, because you have to pay attention for so long, and if you come in the middle, you've already missed so much. So I'm going to try to read some aphorisms. Like I said, I was apprehensive because last guy I ran into, he was a friend of a friend, and he is such a jackass, and he loves aphorisms, and he was trying to tell me stuff, and he knew some good ones, but he just did not, like, he was just a jackass is the problem. And it's like, you run into someone, you think like, oh, you're a friend of a friend, maybe we'll get along, and he was just not fun to deal with. It was kind of terrible. So, but like he was saying how important aphorisms were, I'm just like, dude, it's like, he just thought his stuff was his shit didn't stink, and that his stuff was just like great, like all of his like little aphorisms. I mean, he wasn't dumb, he was a smart guy, but like seriously. Alright, so I'm gonna have to just get through, let's see, marginalia. I'm not gonna read the introduction. Let's get to the aphorisms. I believe Zurau is a place wherever Kafka was, and so it's just it's like calling it by the location where they were written. I don't know if it has any special significance. So I only know about these stuff because hey, past there, Kafka, Franz Kafka. Here we go. There's Zurau Aphorisms, Franz Kafka. Yeah, so I'm actually out of my league here. This is more literary than I'm used to, but I'm gonna try to do some philosophical analysis on this stuff. So, and hopefully, I'm okay actually. I'm a little tired today, but how are you? Thanks for coming by. I mean, I know this stuff. I was just saying right before I got sidetracked very slightly, because I think 109 or something is something I've heard before. It's a famous aphorism, and I quite like it. Okay, so let's see what number 1 is. Yeah, maybe I should do Wittgenstein. I could also do that, but again, Wittgenstein, he was probably dyslexic, and that's why he was writing this way, not because he actually liked writing in aphorisms. It's just a lot easier if you're dyslexic to write in short paragraphs. Okay, so number 1. The true path is along a rope, not a rope suspended way up in the air, but rather only just up over the ground. It seems more like a tripwire than a tight rope. Oh, yeah, edits are such a pain in the butt past there. I feel that. So why would the true path be more like a tripwire? That's kind of interesting. So, now, this harkens back to, you could say, Heraclitus, where the way up and the way down are the same way, and then crooked path is the only path, or whatever that one was from Heraclitus. Could also do Heraclitus aphorisms. Yeah. Well, congratulations on getting your thesis turned in. I mean, that's basically what you have to do. Button chair time, and then you get it in on time, and so it's like, you get it done, that's all that matters. So, unlike other discussions of path in, I guess, the philosophical literature that I'm familiar with, this one is more like the path is what is going to mess you up. It's loose, and it will catch on you. And so instead of yeah, you're welcome. And so instead of it being sort of like not a straight path or a bent path or even a curved path that's like going one way and the other way, this one is one that actually gets caught up on you. So there's a more interactive path. So that's kind of an interesting take on this sort of very old sort of thing. I mean, even in like non-Western philosophy, you've got the Tao, which is always sometimes referred to as the path, and but you definitely don't get tripped up in the Tao. So that's interesting. Okay, so that was a good start. Number 2. All human errors stem from impatience, a premature breaking off of a methodical approach, and ostensibly, I'm tired at the moment, sorry about that, a premature breaking off of a methodical approach, and ostensible pinning down of an ostensible object. All human errors. So maybe are there non-human errors, or is this just what it is to be human? To make errors is to not be methodical. So maybe this is more of a question on what is method. Stem from impatience, a premature breaking off of a methodical approach, an ostensible pinning down of an ostensible object. What is this object we're pinning down? I mean, do we have to be pinning down an object? What's the relationship between objects and impatience? Maybe that's the real question here. Like, how do you actually get from impatience to an ostensible object? Because if the object is really the limit of what we can think of, and when we fail to grasp the object, that's where the impatience comes in. I don't know. That's odd. Yeah, feel free to ask questions. Of course, best there. Feel free to say smarter things than I am. That will help my stream, because you know a lot about stuff. Let's see. Okay, so that was fun. On to 3. There are 2 cardinal human vices. Oh, only 2. I thought there were more. Alright, but cardinal. There are 2 cardinal human vices from which all others derive their being: impatience and carelessness. Impatience got people evicted from paradise. Carelessness kept them from making their way back there. Or perhaps there's only one cardinal vice: impatience. Impatience got people evicted, and impatience kept them from making their way back. Oh, dude, you've never read any Kafka? I mean, weren't you at least forced to read the Metamorphosis in like grade school like I was? Or something. I forget, where did we read? Yeah, I think we read the Metamorphosis. This is interesting, this focus on impatience here, though. Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to read. I mean, the Metamorphosis is it's like teeny book. It's like that big. Like, you'll take a break. I mean, you want to chill out, go read the Metamorphosis. It's just fantastic, and it's like insignificantly big, and so it's worth reading. And you'll just you'll see all the references all over the place because people love it. Yeah, and you know what? Ignore me. Go take your break. Don't do anything I'm saying. You go relax. Okay, do whatever you need to do to relax. Yeah, those piles seem to just get bigger, never smaller. Alright, so why is impatience so important here? Impatience got people evicted from paradise. I mean, so, let's see. The people wanted the knowledge of God, and they didn't want to what? They couldn't grasp it is the problem. So this is what's interesting, again, is if you're going to attempt to understand impatience, what are you impatient about? What is impatience? I mean, it's always some sort of, you've got like something within grasp that you're trying to get. No, you go for something that's within your grasp instead of going for something that you have to like delay gratification or something else. You have to put something that you want off. Otherwise, why would you? It wouldn't be impatience. One of an old quote I saw, it's knowing when not to be patient is basically one of very important skills. Like when you know you have to stop worrying about, when you have to stop pushing things off, and then when it is time to act. That's always a hard question. It comes up in rhetoric too. When do you interject yourself? And so maybe the question here with this impatience is, and what is paradise, is that we have no idea when it is that we have to act. Because we got evicted from paradise because we acted carelessly or impatiently. And then we can't get back because, in some sense, it would require a greater knowledge to get back to where we were. Okay. Let's see, we got a little asterisk. Okay, so he didn't like this one actually at all. Yeah, this one seems a little weaker than the other ones actually. All right. 4. Many shades of the departed busy themselves. Oh, many shades of the departed busy themselves entirely with lapping at the waters of the Acheron, because it comes from us and still carries the salt tang of our seas. This causes the river to coil with revulsion and even to reverse its course, and so to wash the dead back to life. They are perfectly happy and sing choruses of gratitude and caress the indignant river. Yes, yeah, I haven't read Racine. This is interesting, again, with the back and forth sort of notion of these roads and rivers. Like the river flows up, flows down, whatever. The road up, the road down are the same road. And so this is pulling in the life thing, the death and being alive and dead, actually. Wash the dead back to life. So, got this going into here. So that's interesting. So in this sense, is we've got the road up and the road down are one and the same, and now we've got like life and death are one and the same. Like the way forward in life and the way back from death are one and the same. Indiscretion and impatience as man's downfall. Yeah. So this is the indiscretion thing. That's a little different. Saying something like indiscretion. That's interesting though. Maybe you could even say indiscretion is a form of interpersonal impatience. So, yeah. But it's definitely related. So, now we've got... Alright, so this is just interesting. Because to pull, like, the way up in life and the way back in life is really pushing against basically the, like, the forward flow of time and the forward flow of life. So, that's, This is getting kind of interesting. I have no idea where you're going to go with that, but it's sort of interesting. And so once you come back from death, they are perfectly happy and sing choruses of gratitude and caress the indignant river. So the river doesn't even like it, but like it doesn't care in some sense. It's just the way forward and the way back. All right, number 5. From a certain point on, there is no more turning back. That is the point that must be reached. Okay, so here we just were like, well, the way up and the way down in life can even reverse its course. But then here there's a point of no return. And this is a necessary point. It must be. This is a necessary thing that must be reached. Huh. Okay. Now the question is, from a certain point on, there is no more turning back. That is the point that must be reached. But I mean, where were you when you were going this way? I don't know if this is directly from life, but when you're achieving a task, there becomes a tipping point where you have to like sort of see it through, and that's fair. But that's not the point of life, and so life is separate than this. 6. The decisive moment of human development is continually at hand. This is why those movements of revolutionary thought that declare everything preceding to be an irrelevance are correct, because as yet nothing has happened. Alright, now we're getting Nietzschean, where it's sort of you have to overcome the history. Same with Hegel. I guess you could go back to Hegel, really, where you have to overcome the history of everything and sort of overcome, synthesize it, one of these things. I mean, I think what he means by correct here is actually, this is sort of definitory. If you're going to understand anything to be revolutionary, then what it means to be revolutionary is because nothing has happened. You have yet to come to the revolution, which is the important thing. And that's the tipping point. And so nothing has happened because the revolution is the thing that is important. Kairos. Yeah, I think it might be. My Greek is terrible, sadly. Yeah, and I also start losing definitions of words when I get tired, so that's just one of those things. So, your memory is probably better than mine. 7. One of the most effective seductions of evil is the call to struggle. It's like the struggle with women, which ends up in bed. Yeah, I didn't think it was sedition. That would have been way more fascinating if it was a sedition, but I understood that you meant definition. The effective seductions of evil is the call to struggle. It's like the struggle with women which ends up in bed. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if was he a ladies' man. I don't know if Kafka was. I don't think he was. But like, why is this evil, first of all, and why is that the seductions of evil is a call to struggle? Well, like, you're calling someone to a revolution. It's like, well, you think you're gonna do something, and so that I can understand. Like, people get caught up, thinking that there's some grand struggle and that they're off to a, what's it called? A crusade. They basically get themselves on a crusade, and you can see this in sort of the modern sort of like conquering of women, garbage. But like it's a noble crusade, and this is something to be done, and I can see why it would be a seduction of evil. It's like the struggle with women, which ends up in bed. So if that's sort of the comment on sort of this modern sort of the conquering of the other sex, I could see this as not being other than a joke. But it's sort of an it's a fun two little sentences. Okay, 8/9. A smelly bitch that has brought forth plenty of young already rotting in place, but that to me in my childhood meant everything, who continue to follow me faithfully everywhere, whom I am quite incapable of disciplining, but before whom I shrink back, step by step, shying away from her breath, and who will end up, unless I decide otherwise, forcing me into a corner that I can already see, there to decompose fully and utterly on me and with me until finally it is a distinction, the pus and worm-ravaged flesh of her tongue laps at my hand. Well, hell, now we're finally getting somewhere, aren't we? Yeah, crusade. Interesting, yeah. Okay, so I'm actually thinking that this concept of bitch here does just mean a female dog. I don't think the curse use of it is was actually around during Kafka's time. So it's like a smelly female dog that basically, and the term bitch got used because it meant a dog that just liked to have a lot of sex, a female dog that liked to have a lot of sex and was running around trying to sleep with all the other dogs. And so that's just, it's not meant to be in the modern sense, but in the old definitional sense of it there. So this is not what we mean, but it still has the negative connotation, and that's why we have a curse of the word nowadays. Although people, I don't think, actually ever use it to mean the dog-like behavior. So what the heck is going on in this one? So you didn't understand in your childhood that somebody was uncouth and bad acting, but because they liked you, you couldn't talk back to them, and then you just sort of become trapped by the bad behavior that you sort of grew up with. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, forcing you into a corner that I already see, there to decompose fully and utterly on me and with me until finally it is a distinction, the pus and worm-ravaged flesh of her tongue laps at my hand. So it's just like you can't seem to get away from this old sort of torment just because you thought of it somehow differently when you were younger. Very odd. Okay. 10. Oh, shucks, this is not a good copy of this book. A is terribly puffed up. He considers himself very advanced in goodness, since he feels himself magnetically attracting to himself an ever greater array of temptations from quarters with which he was previously wholly unacquainted. The true explanation for his condition, however, is that a great devil has taken up residence within him, and an endless stream of smaller devils and deviltons are coming to offer the great one their service. A kind of revulsion at things you used to think were good. Yeah, past there. You used to think certain things were good, and now you're just sort of revolted by them, and can't escape your younger self and your memories of liking it. I guess that might be the case. I mean, thankfully we've forgotten a lot of the crap we thought was good when we were younger, but of course not all of it. I mean, I can't remember what I liked when I was 7. I mean, I'm sure it was very stupid. So it's like he's criticizing somebody here. I don't know who, but I think this is just like an A blank, like A period, like someone with a name A. And so this person thinks they're good because they feel themselves like drawn to the world, but really it's just the devil taking hold of them. I guess why though? The great one, their services. So without understanding why you're being pulled to things, you're just getting used by all the little devils in the world. Maybe. 11-12. The variety of views that one may have, say, of an apple. The view of the small boy who has to crane his neck for a glimpse of the apple on the table. The view of the master of the house who picks up the apple and hands it to a guest. You know, thinking of like the Husserl, there's a lot of examples of using an apple in philosophy where you can only see, of course, one part. Like, you guys can only see, like, this. You see my beer bottle, I'm drinking beer. But you can, of course, only see the flat image. You can't see the back. You can see that I can rotate it. But, of course, you can only ever see the one side of it at a time, and sort of your brain fills in the rest. Like, you can see that I'm holding it and that how my hand grips it. And you understand something of the shape from that. And see, here we're talking about extremely different kinds of views. One view that he starts off with is the view of the small boy who has to crane his neck. So, and that's the sort of thing you're doing right now. You're seeing a view of a bottle through a video across untold amount of like computers and space and time. And then this one here is the view of the master of the house who picks up the apple and hands it to a guest. So in that case, it's some sort of functional thing that a person can do. They're not even looking at the apple, but they're using it in some way. So that's like, how many different views are there? And is this really a view or is this something else? It kind of is a view too, though. So the question is, what is a view at that point? Don't know. The phenomenology of Kafka. Get to that one day. 13. A first indication of glimmering understanding is the desire to die. Well, very contemporary are we. This life seems unendurable, another unreachable. One no longer feels ashamed of wanting to die. One petitions to be moved from one's old cell, which one hates, into a new one, which one will come to hate. A last vestige of belief is involved here, too, for during the move might not the prison governor by chance walk down the passage, see the prisoner, and say, "Don't lock this man up again. He's coming with me." So this is sort of a... you want to get out of your current situation, and death is the easy solution, maybe, and maybe that's why the first glimmer of understanding is the desire to die. You no longer want the life you have, and so the only obvious way out is death. So sort of criticizing this almost, it's a glimmer of understanding. It's not even real understanding, it's just the first little bit of it. One no longer feels ashamed of wanting to die. One petitions to be moved. Like, so you want something real. Surin? Yeah. Oh, that's true too. They're referring to the apple after referring to Eden in the first one, the early aphorism. Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder if you could like track the religious sort of iconography through the work. I'm sure someone's done it. Yeah, a last vestige of belief involved here too, for during the move, not the prison governor by chance walk down the passage and say, yeah, so you're sort of hoping for enlightenment at death. You like get into maybe the promised land, or maybe you got achieve nirvana in the moment of death. You just want out is basically it. And so this is sort of maybe a Buddhist version of things, or influence. 14. If you were walking across a plain, felt every desire to walk, and yet found yourself going backward, it would be a cause for despair. But as you are in fact scaling a steep precipice, as sheer in front of you as you are from the ground, then your backward movement can be caused only by the terrain, and you would be wrong to despair. This is another crossed out one. Oh, this is another crossed out one. Yeah, this one's a little weaker. But why? Because this is getting pulled by gravity. It's just saying, look, if you're moving backwards when you think you're walking forward, it's sort of like you're despairing because you're losing your own causal agency or whatever. But if you were climbing a steep cliff and you were sliding back, you'd be wrong to despair. You could be sad about that sliding down the hill, but despair wouldn't be the right emotion. But less interesting, and he knew it. Like a path in autumn, no sooner is it cleared than it is once again littered with fallen leaves. Okay. So again, with the path, sort of metaphors and analogies. Like a path in autumn. In some sense, a path in autumn needs its leaves. That's sort of kind of what it needs. No sooner is it cleared than it is once again littered with fallen leaves. So more again with the you need the well, this one, yes, haiku like. I wonder if you could count this out. Like a path in autumn. No, so that like a path in autumn. Yeah, you need another beat there to get to 7, or you need one less to keep it at 5. Oh well, close though. 16. A cage went in search of a bird. Yeah. So in some sense, this is why you shouldn't build prisons, because you will try to fill them up. I don't know where you are out there, watchers, but in New York we have lots of prisons upstate, and we probably create laws just to fill them up. And in America we have private prisons, and they make deals with governments, local governments, to fill up the prisons. And when we run out of criminals, they sue the state for not having enough money coming into them, because they didn't have enough arrests. And so then they petition the government to make harsher laws. And then they filled up the they not petition, they market, and they lobby for harsher laws. And then they get their prisons filled on the backs of the poor, usually. 17. I have never been here before. My breath comes differently. The sun is outshone by a star beside it. Well, that's odd. The sun is outshone by a star beside it. So in some sense, the old source of light is sort of dimmed compared to something far away, and like a pinprick far away somehow outshines the sun. So a new place here, sort of just like the light at the end of the tunnel. Pinprick. Interesting. Okay, let's go on. 18. If it had been possible to build the Tower of Babel without having to climb it, that would have been sanctioned. Yeah. See, if you're going to attack God, God doesn't mind us building stuff. But if you're going to try to reach God yourself, then you have then God has a problem with that. Huh. Yeah, I mean, we can do... This would be to what? To sort of construct a grand gesture, only never to sort of like fulfill its purpose. Yeah, it is kind of... Oh, the Keats. Oh, shining star, how bright thou art. Yes. And Keats I haven't read in forever. Yeah. I have read some Keats, but not in... I don't remember it. It was that long ago. I wonder about the Tower of Babel, though. What would have been sanctioned about it? Like, to have a path to God, basically. But you can't take it. But you can have a path to God, but you can't take it. So in some sense, like, this is, like, going against the impatience. Like, if we had the patience to do it, in some sense, we wouldn't, but without the will to, without having to climb it. If it had been possible, then it would have been sanctioned, because we wouldn't have actually needed to climb it at that point. Yeah, without having to climb it. We wouldn't have needed to climb it if we were able to build it. So that's I mean, yeah, interesting. Moving on. 19. Don't let evil convince you you could keep any secrets from it. Yeah, the devil always needs to get paid. Devil needs his due. Don't think you're gonna get away with it. One way or the other. Of course, you can get away with a lot of stuff, but don't let evil convince you you can keep any secrets from it. Evil always knows. Like, if you really are in this sort of problem where there's gonna be a problem, you're not gonna be able to keep secrets. Don't. This is just good old advice. Best to bite the bullet sometimes. Leopards break into the temple and drink all the sacrificial vessels dry. It keeps happening. In the end, it can be calculated in advance and is incorporated into the ritual. Huh. So. In some sense, so nature is incorporated into the ritual. So this is you know this one. Ooh, cool. I didn't know this one. So, in some sense, nature becomes part of the ritual here. Like, you can't actually get and if you think leopards are evil, maybe all of this does get pulled in, and that's what makes the ritual, because it gets factored in, calculated. I wonder what he meant exactly by calculated, because it's not always clear that what, this calculated may not mean exactly what... Although I think he was like an accountant or something at a certain time. Or maybe his dad was. So maybe it meant something very similar, but I'm not sure if it did. But it factored in. Huh. Okay, Borges? Yeah, I'm sure Borges was all on top of this. Hey, Aristotle. Well, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm trying to experiment with different sorts of ways of presenting philosophy at the moment. So I mentioned to Pasteur earlier, I don't know if Pasteur was here, but you know, philosophy is just sort of hard for me, like hard to do like very well. And I ran into a guy who just hates my guts for whatever reason, and he loved aphorisms, so I'm just like, screw you, you jerk. It's funny. Most people, like, I get a very strong reaction out of some people, and either they really like me or they absolutely hate me. And I ran into a guy who hates me. But he liked aphorisms, so now I'm angry with him. 21. As firmly as a hand holding a stone, held, however, so firmly, merely so that it can be flung at a greater distance. But there is a path even to that distance. So if you got like something you're holding in your hand really tight, but like you're doing it like to throw a stone, you're doing it to throw the rock. Huh. So in some sense, the fact that you're holding it so tightly in some sense, is the path to get rid of it. So as we are holding, that sort of starts the path. Maybe. Sometimes aphorisms can be really annoying, though. Like, I was reading some La Roquefort yesterday, and he just pissed me off. Yeah, absolutely. 22. You are the exercise, the task. No student far and wide. So, you are the exercise, the task, but there's no student far and wide. Are you the student, or is somebody trying to study you? I'm not sure what this one means. Maybe there's a translation hiccup between the German or whatever. I mean, I think my problem with aphorisms is usually philosophy is very hard and people like to spout them off and sound smart. And I'm just like, yeah, that's great that you sound smart for that 3 seconds. You're not that smart, but sounding smart for 3 seconds, I hope it works for you. But I just, yeah. It's like, shut up. Like, do some real work and stop trying to sound smart. Is kind of what happens. I mean, of course, yeah. Say what you need to say and say it clearly. Absolutely, Aristotle. And to Kafka's, well, for whatever it's worth, I think he told his family to burn his notes, and it didn't happen. And so that's how this got published. So, Oh, you know what? That's interesting. The guy I don't like was saying like I asked him if he ever published, and he got like all defensive, like he doesn't publish. Jan Zwicky's book Lyric Philosophy. Interesting. Maybe I'll have to look at that. And he got all defensive because that guy was like, "Oh no, I don't publish." And he was like, "So like started talking like, so what do you think? Someone's just gonna find it and like find like and be like, oh, this is brilliant one day." And basically that's what he was thinking, that someone would happen upon his work and after showing it to nobody, it was gonna be like brilliant. It's like, dude, you are so arrogant. I didn't even want to like, yeah. Yeah, that can happen. Exactly, Aristotle. Like this guy was actually I think a professor of political something or other. He wasn't a straight up philosopher, but he definitely had an inflated sense of importance to what he was doing. And the worst part about it was, I mean, I told him I worked on philosophy, but he just kept thinking I had no idea what I was talking about, and then he was telling me all these aphorisms, all this nice stuff, and he never really realized that he was never able to get a straight answer out of me because he couldn't understand what was going on. And everyone wants to be Emily Dickinson so badly. Yes, like everyone wants to be one of these like great like hidden philosophers. Like no, that's not how anything works. Like like all these people tried to publish. Let me read that out loud, that's fun. But I'm mixing poetry and philosophy. You think so? You're writing like shit. So actually you failed on 2 accounts. You've completely obscured your ideas, so written shitty philosophy, and your words are fucking putrid too, so you've written awful poetry. Yeah, and we both have 0 patience for these fucking dweebs. That's usually the case. I mean, I try to like encourage them to write stuff, but like they don't actually understand what the most of them, they're not gonna, it takes a long time to get good at stuff, and they're not gonna get good at it because they don't actually get any critical feedback and they don't realize what they fucked up. And it's the rare person who can fix their own problems. It's usually very hard to do. Alright, 23. From the true opponent, a limitless courage flows into you. And there we go. You need something else. You need an interlocutor. You need a true opponent, and that is what gives you sort of the you need something to work against. Otherwise, you're just going to have trouble doing it yourself. So this is the issue. And then why is it courage is the question. Because that's what you have to fight against. Because in some sense, it's within you. Because if it's a true opponent, you're basically fighting them and yourself at the same time. And that's where you're going to get your courage from. So 24. Grasp the good fortune that the ground on... Excuse me, let me read this again. Grasp the good fortune that the ground on which you stand cannot be any bigger than the 2 feet you planted on it. Okay. Alright, so yeah, just stay grounded. And the good fortune... See, of course, this is a tautology. I mean, so what is going on here? Because, of course, the ground where you stand can't be any bigger than the 2 feet you plant on. But that just means that, look, the world is pushing up against your 2 feet. And so you've got the whole world backing you up here. Because the ground itself, this is the whole world you're standing on. And it can't be any bigger. It's pushing back on your 2 feet. So, okie dokie. 25. How is it possible to rejoice in the world except by fleeing to it? Yep. How is it possible to rejoice in the world except by fleeing to it? This is another one of those. I fear the translation of the German into English may not work. I don't really know what fleeing to it is, but... because fleeing usually is away. So we're getting sort of a contradictory fleeing here. Except by fleeing to it. Well, you're running away from something else and into the world. Okay, so what is the question? Is you're rejoicing in some... How is it possible to rejoice in the world except by fleeing to it? So I guess you rejoice in the world by fleeing away from something else, except by fleeing to it. Well, that's an interesting way. Like, where are we coming from that we are fleeing to the world? Like, from what? I don't know. I mean, what's the notion of world then? That it's something we're not in, and we have to flee to the world. So, all right, 26. There are innumerable hiding places and only one salvation, but the possibilities of salvation are as numerous as the hiding places. All right, so this is a crossed out one, and I agree with him again, because it's just sort of This is just a tautology, but without the interesting sort of spin on things. It's just saying, look, wherever you start, there's a place to go. I read English and bad English, Aristotle. Yeah, it's one of my deficiencies. I'd like to learn some other languages, but I do not actually have any. No, I just don't at the moment. This is one of yeah. Let me get the second part of this. There is a destination, but no way there. What we refer to as way is hesitation. There is a destination, but no way there. What we refer to as way is hesitation. Yeah. Oh, shucks. Sorry about that. No, I completely agree. And I'm sorry about the no links thing there. I don't even know how to undo that. Let me see. There we go. You are now a mod. Maybe you can post links now. So, okay. Yeah, I think you got killed by the commas in that though. Yeah, there's Wikisource is way there. There is a destination but no way there. What we refer to as way is hesitation. So that's interesting because this is sort of stomping on the Tao, like the way, and saying, look, that's just hesitation. You're not even there is no way. There is no way. It's only hesitation. So this is again saying you have to act. You can't be trying to take a path to a destination. The act is in some sense more important. 27. We are instructed to do the negative. The positive is already within us. Again, I wonder what these words positive and negative mean to. I think this is 1917, so we have electricity, but I don't know if positive and negative have the same connotation as they do now. In terms of electricity, I don't know what these connotations are for Kafka at this time, but we are instructed to do the negative. In some, maybe this is more like a lack. What we lack. The positive is already within us, but maybe if the positive is already within us, we don't need to do it. That's not what we need to work on. So we have to work on the that which we lack. I don't know. 28. Once we have taken evil into ourselves, it no longer insists that we believe in it. Well, that's interesting. How do you take evil into ourselves, and is that the negative? And why would we take it? And why would we do this? Or is this just a reflection on what happens once we have taken evil into ourselves? We don't have to believe in it because why? Because it's already part of ourselves. It's not a question of belief anymore. Do we automatically believe in it, or just like it no longer insists that we believe in it? We don't have. It doesn't need to because we already have made it part of our world. And then it's just sort of knowledge and not belief. I don't know. Okay. 29. The reservations with which you take evil, post-nut clarity. I wish I had that all the time. Except post-evil clarity. Yeah, I agree with you past there. I'm not sure what this kind of concept of evil is here. It might be somewhat unique. Yeah, and once it's part of yourself, it's no longer alien to you. Yeah. Post-evil clarity. Alright. 29. The reservations with which you take evil into yourself are not yours, but those of evil. Actually, I completely agree with that. The things that are holding you back are usually not what you think they are. And so those are not part of yourself. That is holding you back is usually the wrong thing. So that's interesting. The animal twists the whip out of its master's grip and whips itself to become its own master, not knowing that this is only fantasy produced by a new knot in the master's whiplash. Yeah, in some sense this happens a lot. You've got subjugated people, and then they themselves start to self-subjugate for whatever reason. usually because it's in the old Uncle Tom thing, and I should read that book too, but where in some sense the person that is subjugated ends up being worse on themselves and their own people, in some sense, to overcome, to be more like the master. Yeah, the panopticon within. That's the taking on of the prison in some sense. It's living for free in your head, which is dangerous and bad. So this is another good thing. All right, goodness is in a certain sense comfortless. Actually, I don't know why I crossed this one out. I kind of like this one, because goodness is sort of empty. It's not really a straining. It's just sort of a blah. So I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe that's why it's just sort of blah. This whole thing is kind of blah. All right. 31. I do not strive for self-mastery. Self-mastery is the desire, within the endless emanations of my intellectual life, to be effective at a certain radius. But if I am made to describe circles around me, then I had better do it without action, merely contemplating the whole extraordinary complex and taking nothing away with me but the strength that such an aspect, e contrario, would give me. Interesting. Okay, so what is self-mastery? It's like having being able to do certain things in like a certain sphere of influence. Like you can do certain things within a certain limit because you have self-mastered. And if you don't strive for that, but if you're sort of meant to sort of circumspect yourself, then you had better do it without action, merely contemplating the whole extraordinary complex, but the strength that such an aspect would give me. So in some sense, you're trying to take nothing away with me but the strength that such an aspect, in contrariness, would give me. So maybe this is what's going on. Once you if you're striving for self-mastery, that's fine. But what happens is you have to sort of circumscribe yourself, and only that gives you power within that radius. In some sense, that's your little domain of power. And so, in the contrary to like set yourself outside of it, is the only reason you have that power is to understand where the limits are. It's the old Dirty Harry. Good man always knows his limits. You got to know your limits. Man's got to know his limitations. There we go. Man's got to know his limitations. 32. The crows like to insist a single crow is enough to destroy heaven. This is incontestably true, but it says nothing about heaven because heaven is just another way of saying the impossibility of crows. Well, that was fun. Next time someone starts quoting those things on like all crows are black, I'm gonna read this. Crows. I don't know. I think the crow here is sort of like something that stands apart. I don't know. Maybe a single crow is enough to destroy heaven. Like even one of us has the power to do like the impossible. And of course it's true, but it's vacuously true. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Do you read German past there or Aristotle? Let me know. Oh, gotta go AFK? Okay, that's cool. Thanks for stopping by, Aristotle. It's fun to have you here. The impossibility of crows. See, I think this is just sort of, it might be some sort of punning German, but I think there's something actually being said. It says we think it's vacuously true that of course a single crow could destroy heaven, but being vacuously true also means crows are sort of stupid for even thinking that they exist. It's like we sort of think we can like build a tower to God. We think we can take on the devil, but like it's enough to destroy heaven. Like you could throw in with the devil for that matter. But of course it's true, but it's sort of empty because it's just sort of you're shooting at nothing, and we don't count in this sort of world. Like why would we? Okay, 33. Yeah, and now we're getting to martyrs. So martyrs do not underestimate the body. They allow it to be hoisted up onto the cross. And that way they are like their enemies. Yeah. Well, they appreciate what's happening to them, and that's why the enemy's doing it, and that's why they sort of go along with it to be martyred. So, unlike the crow who is trying to take on heaven, the martyr understands that the body matters here. Interesting. 34. His exhaustion is that of the gladiator after the combat. His labor was the whitewashing of a corner of the wall in his office. I am not sure about this one. I was like, okay, maybe this is again the, because of course Kafka seems to really understand contemporary times with just the sort of the bureaucracy and the madness of the modern life. I guess the overpowering bureaucracy and like technology that's like destroying us. And so his exhaustion was like that of a gladiator, but we've done nothing. He painted the corner of the wall in his office. And so maybe this is actually again like sort of the contemporary thing. I see it all online, a lot of people being like, I can't, like, it's just so hard to do anything nowadays. It just seems very difficult. Yeah. It is a fun contrast. I mean, I'd go like for nowadays. It'd be like his labor was what's even like more pathetic nowadays. Whitewashing a corner of the wall in his office, like that's like doing nothing. It's like, oh, you threw some paint in like the corner because it was like a bad spot. Like nowadays, what would that be? Like no one has offices anymore. It'd be like turning on the radio or something. You're like, oh my god, I listened to it, or like reading a book. Very in line with the kind of aesthetic sensibility from the time. Yeah, agreed. Alright, 35. There is no possessing, only an existing. Only an existing that yearns for its final breath, for asphyxiation. Okay, back to the death theme here. And what is this possessing? We don't... Okay, so this is actually, this is from Wittgenstein. You don't have your own life. Like, in some sense, if you can't, if you can't say that other people have your life, then you can't have it too. Like you can't possess something that, like, if you can't, like I have life like you have life, whoever's watching this out here. But like I have my own life is not like you can't have my own life. Like that just doesn't make sense. And so in some sense there is no possessing of your own life. You can only exist in some sort of more general way. And then he says, an existing that yearns for its final breath, for asphyxiation. And so it's not just death, but a certain kind of extremely painful death and terrible death. This is a way that people die. So it's like a very human thing. So this is not just something possessed that you can have, but you want a very human death. Okay. Fun times. 36. Earlier, I didn't understand why I got no answer to my question. Today, I don't understand how I presumed to ask a question. But then I didn't presume, I only asked. Well, this is very smart. This is exactly like, okay. A lot of times you ask dumb questions when you're young and you don't understand. And you don't understand why the people ignored you. It's because it was dumb. It was a bad question. You ask a question, they don't answer you. It's because it was stupid. That's quite often what happened, and I hate that people say there's no stupid questions. This is what happens in stupid questions. You get ignored. And today I don't understand how I presumed to ask such a stupid question. But then I didn't presume, I only asked. And so in some sense, there is still virtue in asking, because otherwise you don't move on to this other sort of understanding of what happened and why you didn't get an answer to the question. 37. His answer to the accusation that he might possess something but didn't exist consisted of trembling and heart palpitations. Okay, so we're referring to some of the previous few things. His answer to the accusation that he might possess something but didn't exist. So I guess this refers to the person so he might possess something but he didn't exist. Consisted of trembling and heart palpitations. Yeah, so again, this is, I think, is exactly in line with the Wittgenstein, actually, is that he thinks he has some sort of personal thing. Can't believe Kafka invented dissociating. Well, I'm reading it very differently. I'm reading the Wittgensteinian reading of this, not a dissociation here. But yeah, you could take it that way too. I mean, I think you're probably closer to his actual meaning. I might be overreading Wittgenstein into this. But like, it's freaking him out that there is no he that does the possession here. But you can still he can still possess something, but it wasn't him that did the possessing. It was some sort of other sort of possessing. Interesting. 38. A man was astounded by the ease of the path of eternity. It was because he took it downhill at a run. Yeah. If you take a downhill and you can't really stop yourself at a run, you're just gonna bowl through life. Some people are like that. 39. It is not possible to pay evil in installments, and still we always try. Yeah, you can't buy off evil in like little bites. It does not work that way. You don't lose part of your soul, you lose the whole thing. It is conceivable that Alexander the Great, for all the military successes of his youth, for all the excellence of the army he trained, for all the desire he felt in himself to change the world, might have stopped at the Hell's Pont, and never crossed it, and not out of fear, not out of indecisiveness, not out of weakness of will, but from heavy legs. You know, that's true. It's like if he decided he didn't, like his legs just weren't out to do this, like he didn't want to walk, it's like, you know what, I don't have to go that way. It's like there's still, out of all the things that could have happened, it could have just been a physical, be like, fuck you, I'm like, my body doesn't want to do that. And it's not because he couldn't, it's just because he didn't want to. Eternity is a kind of terminal destination in this sense, right? I'm really exhaustion is a good way of thinking of it. Yeah, he could have like self-exhausted himself. I'm thinking, yeah, it's not like sort of a terminal destination, more of like like impatience. Yes, there we go, and we're back to the beginning. Yeah, a self-exhaustion or an impatience. So I don't think of it as a terminal destination here. It's exactly, you've got, I completely agree. It's the impatience, and it's sort of a self-exhausting, which is going on here. And which you could think of as like an impatience, because once you become self-exhausted, then you act impatiently because you can no longer hold on. So this might all be going back to those like first passages on impatience. Good catch there, past there. Very good catch. 39A. There's the first A. And we're back to roads. The road is endless. There are no shortcuts and no detours, and yet everyone brings to it his own childish haste. You must walk this L of ground too. You won't be spared it. Again, we've got the haste and impatience. Impatience. Yeah, impatience here again. Roads again, and there's no sparing it. There are no shortcuts, no detours. It is only our notion of time that allows us to speak of the last judgment. In fact, it's a court-martial. Again, yeah, the starred ones are a little weaker, but I think this one has some nice humor to it. Yeah, and so we're imposing our sort of broken up notion of time, which allows us to put a last bit on it, even though that is sort of nonsense in this sort of ongoing road up, road down world that he's talking about here. But it's a court-martial, and that's not the last judgment. That's just something that happens. It's just maybe the most important part in some sense, but it's not last. 41. The disproportion of the world seems fortunately to be merely numerical. Yeah. So again, this is sort of a commentary on the time thing above. It's sort of how we've broken up the world is numerically, but it's sort of, our numerical breakup is of the world is arbitrary, and so that's why it's a fortunately to be numerical. It's just sort of our folly, how we make the world disproportionately broken up. Okay, 42. So to let one's hate and disgust-filled head slump onto one's chest. I guess I like to sleep, to let one's hate and disgust-filled head slump onto one's chest. Like this? I don't know. 43. The dogs are still playing in the yard, but the quarry will not escape them. Never mind how fast it is running through the forest already. Yeah, so again, folly. It's trying to run. The quarry is trying to run away, trying to save itself, and it doesn't even matter. Staring down? Did I slump down or stare down? Oh, so you're looking down. Yeah, I don't know. So in some sense, even though like the pursuers are just playing around at the moment, you can't even escape like the sort of joking around of the pursuers. Yeah, this is like trying to outrun death. It's like it doesn't matter when death starts, you can't run away from it. You have girded your loins in the most laughable way for this world. I mean, if people don't know what girding the loins is. I mean, the Greeks and the Romans used to, wear more flowing robes, and basically girding your loins was to wrap up your robes in a way to basically turn them into shorts. And so that would, when you gird your loins, was to turn them into shorts because you were going to war because you couldn't get yourself tripped up. And so in some sense, they're saying like you try to tie up your clothes to like be ready for action, but it's like it's laughably the way you did it. Like you tried to save yourself, and instead you just sort of tied your legs into knots, basically. Yeah, it's a fun thing. I saw it on like social media a while back. Just like Google an image of it, and it shows you how to tie your robes up and to basically make it so you can run more efficiently. 45. The more horses you put to, the faster your progress. Not, of course, in the removal of the cornerstone from the foundations, which is impossible, but in the tearing of the harness and your resultant riding cheerfully off into space. He does have a sense of humor. It's like, all right, so you're gonna like you the more horses you put there, the farther you're gonna get flung, basically, when the reins snap and the bridle snaps and all the stuff breaks. Okay, it's fun. 46. The German word for sign signifies both to be there and to belong to him. Okay. And now I learned something. I mean, sein und Zeit, being in time. So being and to belong to him. So I did not know that. I wonder. Yeah, I mean, again, I'd have to know much more. To be there, it's like being, and to belong to him. Interesting. So we've got being in time right now. I wonder if Heidegger ever. Yeah, exactly. Heidegger, baby. I wonder if Heidegger ever read Kafka. It would seem reasonable. Actually, I don't know when all of. I don't know when all of Kafka's stuff was published, because Being in Time was written in 1920, 1921, something like that, 1922. Published in 23. Although apparently he wrote it incredibly quickly too. Heidegger, I think, wrote it in that book like this thick, like not a small book. It's like he wrote it, I think, in the course of a few months, or maybe like just like a month or two or something, like some ridiculously short time. Yeah. So I guess you wouldn't know when this was because I don't think any of these aphorisms were published until much later. So I don't think Heidegger could have read this before Being in Time. Okay. They were offered the choice between... It's 47. They were offered the choice between being kings and being royal envoys. Like children, they all wanted to be the envoys. This is why there are so many envoys chasing through the world, shouting for the want of kings, the most idiotic messages to one another. They would willingly end their miserable lives, but because of their oaths of duty, they don't dare to. Yeah, this is no one wants responsibility, they just want the fun. Because being the person in charge is always hard, but you want to be one of the people that are just part of the entourage and have a good time and don't have to actually do anything. But that's why it gets miserable, because then you're at someone else's beck and call, but then you also have an oath of duty. So what you do is you've tied your life to somebody else, but then you've become sort of their entourage, and you get miserable because your life is no longer your own, but you get to have a lot of fun on the sly, I guess. 48. Yeah, this Pastea says, yeah, this stuff is always difficult because even if it pulls at the same threads, it's hard to determine if they actually read it or not. Yeah, absolutely. People get criticized for like not quoting others. It's very hard. You could have gotten a bunch of these things from different sources, and attribution's always difficult. And you try to do the right thing by people when, like I write, everyone tries to do the right thing, but it gets difficult, especially in history, when we don't have the same means of referencing people. 48. Belief in progress doesn't mean belief in progress that has already occurred. That would not require belief. This is interesting. Belief in progress doesn't mean belief in progress that has already occurred. That would not require belief. Now, why not? Because this is some sort of like belief in history in some sense, and it would not require belief. It would require something else. If you're ignoring history, that's a different problem. So if you believe in progress that we go forward, it's not that stuff happened in the past. You wouldn't have to believe it in some sort of like positive sense of belief. You just have to sort of accept it. If you didn't accept it, then it'd be a very different sort of thing. But that's sort of how you slice up belief, knowledge, and acceptance. 49. A is a virtuoso, and heaven is his witness. Okay, so this is back to the old sort of obscureness theory of creativity. It's not normal people witness the virtuoso. But then again, A was being criticized before, so this may also be a criticism saying, look, us normal humans don't understand what's going on, and maybe that just also means that A is sort of full of nonsense. 50. Let's see, how long have I been doing this? Ooh, over an hour. A man cannot live without a steady faith in something indestructible within him, though both the faith and the indestructible thing may remain permanently concealed from him. One of the forms of this concealment is the belief in a personal God. Yeah, you have to sort of believe. You don't need to. One form of this, is a belief of a personal God, and that way you can have the sort of like hard rock to hold on to. And there's definitely people that live that way. So there's okay. I mean, I think this is just a sociological point. Like, people do this. Is this a book of quotes? Takeshi Boy asks. This is a book of aphorisms by Franz Kafka. I believe he, with all his other work, told his family to burn it after his death, and they didn't, and they published it. So this is a Kafka aphorisms called the Zurau Aphorisms. "51. It took the intercession of the serpent. Evil can seduce a man, but not become human." It took the intercession of the serpent. I don't know. I mean, did the evil want to become human? I don't know. I have to keep going. 52. In the struggle between yourself and the world, hold the world's coat. I mean, that's very polite of you. Eden again. Yes, we're getting back to the religious stuff. In the struggle between yourself and the world, hold the world's coat. So we can't really do much here. The best we can really hope for is to just be like sort of the world's butler. Maybe. 53. It is wrong to cheat, even if it is the world of its victory. That's a little odd. I don't know what this means. I feel like this is almost ungrammatical. I don't quite know how to parse it. It is wrong to cheat, even if it is the world of its victory. The world of its victory is cheating? What does that mean? I don't know. think about that one. 54. The world is only ever a constructed world. What we call the sensual world is evil in the constructed world, and what we call evil is only a fleeting necessity in our eternal development. With a very strong light, one can make the world disappear. Before weak eyes, it will become solid. Before still weaker eyes, it will acquire fists. And to eyes yet weaker, it will be embarrassed and punch the face of anyone who dares look at it. Well, there we go. Now we're getting somewhere. So we've got a constructed world, and what we call a sensual world is evil in the constructed world. Yeah, we are exactly past there. We're getting sort of Neoplatonic. And what we call evil is only a fleeting necessity in our eternal development. So, I mean, we've got this big development, and we're getting past the sensual world, which is evil in the constructed world. So, there's the sort of the sensual world is just the sort of like the fleeting, non-Platonic world. Alright, so, but then what's going on down here? Very strong light, one we can make the world disappear. Okay, so we're ignoring the sensual then. Before weak eyes will become solid. So then now it's like a very strong light. And then it all goes away. But it still seems solid to weak eyes. Still weaker, it seems even more human because it acquires fists. And to eyes yet weaker, it will be embarrassed and punched with the face of anyone who dares look at it. So in some sense, maybe this is taking it onto the person themselves. This sort of a solipsism. And that anyone tries to sort of get at them, then they get embarrassed and they hit back. And so it's like the weakest is the solipsist in some sense, where they're thinking they are the world, but they're so ashamed of it in some sense that they can't take any sort of self-reflection at that point. 55. Everything is deception. The question is whether to seek the least amount of deception or the mean, or to seek out the highest. In the first instance, you will cheat goodness by making it too easy to acquire, and evil by imposing too unfavorable conditions on it. In the second instance, you cheat goodness by failing to strive for it in this earthly life. In the third instance, you cheat goodness by removing yourself from it as far as you can, and evil by maximizing it in a bid to reduce its impact. Accordingly, the second option is the one you go for because you always cheat goodness, but in this case at least, or so it would seem, not evil. Okay. What the heck just happened there? The least amount of deception, the mean, or the highest. So is a question of what sort of, we're in a bad world where you're going to be deceived, but the question then is, what do you do about it? Do you go for the least, the average, or the highest deception? What do we do? And so since we're always going to be cheating, the least goodness is making it too easy to acquire, and evil by imposing too unfavorable conditions on it. The second, the average amount, so you're just not going for it, or you're not going for it or not going for evil goodness. So it's just sort of, you're cheating it by failing to strive for it. You're just being sort of meh in it. And in the third instance, you cheat it by removing yourself from it as far as you can. You're doing the highest level of deception, and so you're avoiding goodness and you're maximizing the evil. And if I was going to, removing yourself from it as far as you can, and evil by maximizing it in a bid to reduce its impact. So you're taking on the evil by being as deceptive as possible. And so accordingly, the second object is the one to go for because you always cheat goodness by at least case, or so it would seem, not evil. You're not overdoing the evil in the first case. Because if you do the least amount of deception, you cheat goodness by making it too easy, because then it's not so good. And in the case where you're cheating all the time, and then you're taking on too much evil, so in some sense, the thing to do is not to be good or not. It is very noir. There is no good or bad, but you have to sort of keep the extremes out, because then you're making either good too good or evil too evil. Okay. 56. There are questions we could never get past, were it not that we are freed of them by nature. Yeah. So we're back to the nature theme here too. Like, we have to run into the world. How does nature solve our problems for us? Like, there are questions we could never get past, or not that we are freed of them by nature. Somehow there's something outside of ourselves that frees us. Otherwise, we'd be stuck. So there's something else going on here. It's not just this good and evil, but then there's nature that helps us, that frees us in some sense. Interesting. 57. Language can be used only very obliquely of things outside the physical world, not even metaphorically, since all it knows to do, according to the nature of the physical world, is to treat of ownership and its relations. Okay, so now we're basically getting very 20th century. Yeah, this is the old thing. We can't. There's certain things we can describe very well in language, certain things we can't. The old example I remember being told when I was a kid is like, try to explain how scissors work. It's like, well, you can't. It's like, well, these two pieces of metal somehow rub together and like slice a piece of paper. And if you didn't know what scissors were, you'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, you'd have to like show how it works. But like, language basically fails very well. Language fails when trying to describe mechanical operations. It can only describe the physical world of like an object traveling in a certain way. But once you start trying to describe mechanisms, very hard. And so certain things that all it knows to do, according to the nature of the physical world, is to treat of ownership and its relations. This is what language does well. You can start talking of the grammar, subject, object, predicate, what is in relation to what. So of like who owns what and its relations. And so this is really, sort of 20th century philosophy of language things here. Like, if you can only talk about the outside the physical world, not even metaphorically, is to treat of ownership and relations. Yeah, it's, this is the only way I kind of understand this, is just, there are certain instances of trying to describe things. If you describe how you move, how mechanical things operate, it gets very, very difficult very, very quickly. I think, I wish I could describe the scissor thing better. But yeah, once you start trying to get outside of just simple grammar, it gets very, very difficult. All right, moving on. 58. The way to tell fewest lies is to tell fewest lies, not to give oneself the fewest opportunities of telling lies. Oh, somebody should tell some politicians this one. The way to tell fewest lies is to tell fewest lies, not to give oneself the fewest opportunities. Yeah, you're not being good. In some sense, avoiding something is not really being good. It's just like, if you don't want to lie, don't lie. But don't cut yourself off from opportunities where you're... don't have to lie. 59. To its own way of seeing, a wooden stair moderately hollowed out by people's footfalls is just some knocked together article of wood. Yeah. So from what perspective? I mean, so this is kind of interesting. It's like one of those like steps that has been like just worn down in history, and we always think, oh, look how human life has worn into the wood or worn into the stone. Yeah, but from another perspective, it's just like, it's an old piece of wood. It's just some knocked together article of wood. From the wood's perspective, it's just been there forever. It doesn't care that it's like all this human life has gone into shaping it. 60. Whoever renounces the world must love humanity because he is also renouncing their world. Accordingly, he will begin to have a true sense of human nature, which is incapable of anything but being loved, assuming, that is, that one is on the same footing as it. Is this the first time we've got love mentioned here? Whoever renounces the world must love humanity because he's also renouncing their world. And what is the notion of world here, and why is love outside of it? Accordingly, he will begin to have a true sense of human nature, which is incapable of anything but being loved. Yeah, microwave Buddhism, maybe. Assuming that one is on the same footing as it. What is the it here? It's true sense of human nature. Yeah, So human nature, love, and as long as you're on the same footing as on human nature, it's all love. Okay. Yeah, microwave Buddhism. Sure. 61. Whoever in this world loves his neighbor does just as much and just as little wrong as who in this world loves himself. Remains the question of whether the former is possible. Yeah, so this is again back to the non-self sort of thing, again with the Buddhism, as just mentioned by Pastea. Yeah, and so we don't even know, and the question if this is even right or makes sense still holds. We don't know about that question. 62. The fact that the only world is a constructed world takes away hope and gives us certainty. Yeah, I think this is just the Buddhist, again with the Buddhism and the, what's the word? I'm blanking on the word. Conventional world. If I said if it was the only world is a conventional world, takes away hope and gives us certainty, that would be very, 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 very Buddhist and sort of a conventionalist. So I think that's kind of a thread going through this also. Our art is an art that is dazzled by truth. The light shed on the rapidly fleeing grimace is true. Nothing else is. Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for coming by, Pesta. I appreciate it. Have a good day and have a good sleep. So let's see. Number 63. Our art is an art that is dazzled by truth. The light shed on the rapidly fleeing grimace is true. Nothing else is. Huh. Okay, I'm not sure. Because I'm not sure what our art really is here. And what is it that, thank you. I hope you have a fantastic night. What is it to be dazzled by truth? And why is it that art is that which is dazzled by truth? I don't know. And light shed on the rapidly fleeing grimace is true. Nothing else is. Okay, not sure on that one. 64-65. The expulsion from paradise is eternal in its principal aspect. This makes it irrevocable and our living in this world inevitable. But the eternal nature of the process has the effect that not only could we remain forever in paradise, but that we are currently there whether we know it or not. Well, okay, now we're getting somewhere. I hope Pastea stuck around to hear that one at least. The expulsion from paradise is eternal in its principal aspect. Yes, it's an absolute expulsion. We can't go back. Makes it irrevocable, and our living in this world inevitable. Yeah, because we can't get back. But the eternal nature of the process that we've always been expelled. Expelled. So we're always being expelled, basically. We're constantly. We can't go back. If we sort of stop being expelled, then we could go back. But the process itself is like forever expulsion. Has the effect that not only could we remain forever in paradise, because in some sense we're always still tied to it, seeing we're always being expelled, but that we are currently there whether we know it or not, and being tied to it, we're still there. So that's interesting. Just by being forever expelled means we always have some thread back to it. 66. He is a free and secure citizen of the world because he is on a chain that is long enough to allow him access all parts of the earth. Yeah, this is exactly what I was saying before, the thread that ties you back to something. All right. And yet not so long that he could be swept over the edge of it. At the same time, he is also a free and secure citizen of heaven because he is also attached to a similar heavenly chain. If he wants to go to earth, the heavenly manacles will throttle him. If he wants to go to heaven, the earthly manacles will. But for all that, all possibilities are open to him, as he is well aware. Yes, he even refuses to believe the whole thing is predicated on a mistake going back to the time of his first enchainment. Yeah, so this is exactly on the previous theme. You're tied to heaven, but that also means you can't go completely into earth, and that means you can't go completely even to heaven too, because you're tied at both ends. So also back with the thread, and it's sort of this loose thread where you can go everywhere, but you can't fall off any edge. So it's sort of like you're tied. see, which way am I going here? You're tied between some sort of string, and heaven's over here and earth is over here. And so you're sort of like free to move in this thing, but the limits sort of keep you always just like right at the edge. Wherever you go, that's the farthest you can go. That's an interesting thought. So you can't really go anywhere. Well, you can go in that limit, and so you're sort of the way they draw out the path of like the sweeping of the earth around the sun. Oops, sorry about that. I hit my pop filter. And so it's sort of like you've got this like string that sweeps out a path, and you can go anywhere in that like sort of area, but you can't get to heaven, and you can't escape really earth. You can't get yourself into like that area. You're just sort of always sort of tied at different points. You can't get directly to the like sort of the earth, and nor can you get back to heaven. Either way. Okie dokie. 67. He runs after the facts like someone learning to skate, who furthermore practices where it is dangerous and has been forbidden. Interesting. So it's like, yeah, you go to the dangerous place and you think you're learning how to do something, but it's just sort of foolish and dangerous. Huh. Okay. This is not actually a bad metaphor for us. We're always like a fiddler on the roof. You're practicing. Where would you do that? Why would you do that? That's crazy. You're just as precarious as a fiddler on the roof, which was probably written about the same time as this stuff. 68. Is there anything as blithe as believing in one's own household god? I don't know. 69. Theoretically, there is one consummate possibility of felicity, to believe in the indestructibility in oneself, and then not to go looking for it. Yeah, I think everyone sort of believes that they are rational, that they have something that isn't going to break, that they understand some sort of logic. And if you are foolish enough, like a philosopher like myself, to go looking for it, I can guarantee you will realize exactly how foolish you are. And you think you're indestructible, and then you will just sort of giggle at this because you know better at a certain point. And why is this interesting? Because there's one consummate possibility of felicity. And this is why I know I'm full of shit. I know I'm infelicitous, because I went looking, and once you find what's there, you will realize mostly you're not going to know what the hell's going on. At least that's for me. I don't know what the hell's going on. So if you think you believe in the indestructible in oneself, like some sort of hard rationality, the Kafka suggestion, and mine too, if you don't want it to get broken, don't go looking for it, because it will break. 71. The indestructible is one thing, and at one and the same time it is each individual, and it is something common to all, hence the unique, indissoluble connection among mankind. Yeah, this was the Wittgensteinian point I was saying before. If you say you have something, like an indestructible will, an indestructible rationality, you think you're not going to lose your mind or lose something. It's same time as it is each individual, and it's something common to all. You can't say that you have it if somebody else can't have it too. Hence, uniquely indissoluble connection among mankind. So if I'm talking to you and you think you understand me and I think I understand you, that's because there's something indissoluble and connecting us. And this is the thing that is indestructible, because it is between all of us and is what we think we have. Of course, my world is kind of shaky, so that makes me worried for you too. Okay, 72. The same person has perceptions that, for all their differences, have the same object, which leads one to infer that there are different subjects contained within one and the same person. It's a little odd. Not sure about this one. He crossed it out himself. The same person has perceptions that, for all their differences, have the same object. Alright, so so this is a pencil, and like you look at it from this angle and it looks a little different, and I'm looking and I see it flat like a side, and now if I look at it like it's straight, you look at it like it's horizontal. And so we've got different perceptions of the same object. So there are different subjects contained one in the same person. So I mean, if you're just doing this sort of basic philosophy stuff there, it's like, yeah, you can see things from different angles, but it's the same object, and so you're looking at you're seeing different shapes, and so but you still hold on to that one object. It's still the pencil. So Kafka phenomenology. 73. He scavenges the leftovers from his own table. That makes him better fed than the others for a little while, but he also forgets how to eat at the table, and so the supply of leftovers dries up. Well, that's interesting. So it's like if you start scavenging and being sort of less proper, you might do well for a little while, but then once you sort of lose your civilization, what stops existing, what the bits of civilization that you were feasting on disappears. So this is the Lion King right here. When Scar takes over, the civilization breaks down, and then there's not actually the same amount of food anymore, even though they feasted for a little while. Okay. 74. If what was supposed to be destroyed in paradise was destructible, then it can't have been decisive. However, if it was indestructible, then we are living in a false belief. Okay, so now we're starting to break the chain to paradise here. If what was supposed to be destroyed in paradise was destructible, so our way back was destroyed, then it can't have been decisive. If it was destructible, then it's not eternal, and therefore we might find a way back. However, if it was indestructible, then we're living in a false belief. So in some sense, that would mean that the expulsion from Eden is indestructible, but that would be very weird that the expulsion is what's permanent and not paradise, not the Eden. So that's very sort of that's an interesting thought. I mean, it turns very hard on exactly what you understand by indestructibility and decisiveness here, and understanding of paradise. And I am not a theologian. I do not know what those all the thought that goes into that, but it does again play on the themes that we were discussing earlier about the connection back to Eden. 75. Test yourself against mankind. It teaches the doubter to doubt and the believer to believe. Yeah, I mean, this is back to the Buddhist themes, I guess. Going out and dealing with people. You have to go out into mankind. And it will just reinforce the things. It will not necessarily teach you something different, but that is how to do things. Test yourself against mankind. It's the only way to test yourself, and for these things is to go out and test against mankind, not by some silly games or tests. Just like practice. 76. The feeling, I'm not dropping anchor here, and straight away the feeling of sustaining sea swell around one. Okay, I don't know enough about the sea metaphors. But I'm not dropping anchor here, and straight away the feeling of sustaining sea swell around one. So you're not gonna put your anchor down, hammer down, but then all of a sudden it comes up and gets you. I don't know. A reversal. Lurking, fretful, hoping. The answer creeps around the question, peers despairingly in its averted face, follows it on its most abstruse journeys, that is, those that have least to do with the answer. A reversal. Yeah, and so maybe this is just sort of I'm not sure. If you're chasing something and you go on some sort of crazy journey, that usually is not what you were. The journey have nothing to do with the answer. It's like, why did you go on the journey? That's usually not the answer. And the journey itself has nothing to do with the answer, but you did it for some reason, and the journey was part of how you thought you were going to solve it, but it usually isn't, because how would you know? 77. Dealings with people bring about self-scrutiny. That's true. This is more the Buddhist, go out into the world, meet the people. That's how you understand new things about yourself in the world. It's not by usually sitting around by yourself, although he disagrees with that. Well, actually, no. You have to go meet the world somehow, and go meeting with mankind somehow. 78. The spirit only becomes free at the point where it ceases to be invoked as a support. Okay, yeah, so if you're using this concept of the spirit as a crutch, then you're basically tying it down. That seems smart. 79. Sexual love deceives us as to heavenly love. Were it alone, it would not be able to do so, but containing within itself unknowingly a germ of heavenly love, it can. Okay, so sexual love is kind of like heavenly love. This is again tying things together. Germ of heavenly love. Okay. 80. The truth is indivisible and is therefore incapable of recognizing itself. Whatever claims to recognize it must therefore be a lie. Whatever claims to recognize it must therefore be a lie. And he crossed this one out. The truth is indivisible and therefore incapable of recognizing itself. Whatever claims to recognize it must therefore be a lie. In some sense, yeah, I agree with this. But the question is, then if you are sort of equivalent to the truth, then you're indivisible and you're not looking at yourself. This is a sort of a notion of very big truth, like some sort of individual holism truth. And so, yeah, you'd have to be the universe itself to sort of recognize the universe itself. But it's sort of a very... I wouldn't go with a great concept of truth there. Alright, let's go on. 81. No one can crave what truly harms him. If in the case of some individuals things have that appearance, and perhaps they always do, the explanation is that someone within the person is demanding something useful to himself but very damaging to a second person who has been brought along partly to give his opinion on the matter. If the man had taken the part of the second person from the outset and not just when the time came to make the decision, then the first person would have been suppressed and with it the craving. Okay, so this is a certain sort of theory on desires that you can't actually will self-harm. Then you've got... If you do, then you've got some sort of dissociation where you're sort of thinking, well, I'll take on the harm because my future self will be happy for other reasons. But if your future self had the say, then you wouldn't have ever made the decision. It would have suppressed the first thing anyway. So, yeah. This is not that's actually a pretty common theme, common position in this stuff. 82. Why do we harp on about original sin? It wasn't on its account that we were expelled from paradise, but because of the tree of life, at least we eat of its fruit. Okay, so the original sin is now based inside the tree of life, but because of the tree of life, lest we eat of its fruit. Yeah, because it's not on its account that we were expelled from paradise, but because of the tree of life, lest we eat of its fruit. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I don't know enough about these sort of concepts. It wasn't on its account that we were expelled from paradise. No, because we didn't have the original sin at that time. But because of the tree of life, lest we eat of the fruit. So in some sense, the original sin was in the structure of the tree of life there and us eating its fruit. That's where the original sin was created. And so it was in some sort of the setup of Eden. 83. We are sinful not only because we have eaten of the tree of knowledge, but also because we have not yet eaten of the tree of life. Oh, is this the tree of life? Oh. Yes, yeah, I don't know the distinction exactly, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. The condition in which we find ourselves is sinful, guilt or no guilt. Yeah, so in some sense, the sinful condition is where we are, according to Kafka. But, yeah, I don't know what this is enough about it. Too bad. 84. We were created to live in paradise, and paradise was designed to serve us. Our designation has been changed. We are not told whether this has happened to paradise as well. Well, that's interesting, yeah. I mean, if we got expelled, then is paradise still paradise? Or is it something else now? Has it been somehow corrupted or expelled from itself? Or does it follow us around as some sort of thing that holds on to us, and therefore not paradise anymore. 85. Evil is an emanation of human consciousness at certain transitional points. It is not really the physical world that is illusion, but the evil of it, which to our eyes constitutes admittedly the physical world. Okay, so evil's all in our head, consciousness, at certain transitional points. So in some sense, I kind of can get on board with this. We get ourselves kind of into like stable bits of culture, thought for a while. And for a while, everything seems like, okay, it makes sense. We think we got a good grasp on things. And what happens is when things start to break down, then you start to think things are evil because you think things were okay when everything made sense back in the day, but then evil somehow creeps in. And that's when you're transitioning out of whatever that sort of like more stable, what was a stable understanding of the world. And so it's not really the physical world that is illusion, but the evil of it. So it's not even the evil, it's not the physical world that is illusion, but the evil in this transitional phase. That's still illusion, that's it, which to our eyes constitutes admittedly the physical world, since we can't tell the difference. But is some sort of stability in nature going on. As we change, the evil emanates from us. 86. Ever since original sin, we are basically all alike in our ability to know good and evil. Even so, this is where we seek particular advantage. Actually, it's only after knowledge that the real differences begin. The appearance to the contrary is provoked in the following way. No one can be satisfied with understanding alone, but must make an effort to act in accordance with it. He lacks the strength to do so, therefore he must destroy himself. Even at the risk of not receiving the necessary strength, it is simply that he has no option other than to undertake this final effort. This is the meaning of the penalty of death for eating of the tree of knowledge. It may also be the original meaning of natural death. The effort is daunting. One would rather reverse the original knowledge of good and evil. The term original sin refers to this fear. Okay. But what was done cannot be undone, only muddied. To this end, motivations appear. The entire world is full of them. Yes, the whole visible world may be nothing more than a motivation of a man wanting to rest for a moment, an attempt to forge the fact of knowledge, to make of the knowledge an end in itself. Okay, so what is going on in this one? So, the appearance to the contrary is provoked in the following way. It's only after the knowledge that the real difference is being. So, in some sense, there's no real difference. If you didn't have knowledge, there wouldn't be any differences. We'd all be the same. But what happens is we think we are not satisfied, and we think we must destroy ourselves and change ourselves to understand something, but still we're all the same if there is no knowledge. There simply is no other option to undertake this final effort of trying to make an effort to act in accordance with understanding. No one can be satisfied with understanding alone, but must be an act in accordance with it. So you think you have something to understand, and you must act according to the world or some knowledge or something. So, and that's what's happened. You've eaten from the tree of knowledge, and now you have to act in accordance with a world that you don't understand. All right, and the effort is daunting. One would rather reverse the original knowledge. You want to go back to being ignorant, and you can't do that. Only muddy your knowledge. And to that end, motivations appear. The entire world is full of them. Yeah, you want to rest for a moment. You want to go back to the place of where you don't have to adjust your world to your life to the world. And just to make the knowledge an end in itself. Forge the fact of knowledge. An attempt to forge the fact of knowledge. To make of the knowledge an end in itself. You don't want to have to adjust yourself just to know, but not to have to change. Okay. 87. A faith like an axe, as heavy as light. Okay. 88, 89. Death is ahead of us, say in the way in our classrooms we had a picture of Alexander the Great in battle. What must be done is by our actions to blot out or obscure the picture in our lifetimes. Huh. Death is ahead of us. We have to blot out the picture of death that is coming ahead of us. So, I mean, earlier on, he was saying that death is sort of this great thing we have to know, and now it's not so much that. It's like we've moved on. We have to somehow muddy the picture. Muddying the picture seems like the thing we have to do. Okay. And he mentioned Alexander the Great in battle. He's saying Alexander didn't need to like follow his destiny. He could have just been like, my legs are heavy. He could have just been exhausted, run out of patience with fighting, and in some sense, to blot out the picture of your destiny, to blot out the picture of your death. Maybe. 90. Two alternatives: either to make oneself infinitesimally small, or to be so. The former is perfection and hence inaction, the latter a beginning and therefore action. Okay, so to make oneself infinitesimally small, or to be infinitesimally small. So, I mean, to like force yourself into this thing is an inaction. You have to get yourself into sort of the form of the infinitesimal. But if you're already that way, then you've started from there, and therefore an action. Okay. There's a crossed out one also. That one was, and this one too. To avoid the solecism. I don't know what this word means. Whatever is to be entirely destroyed must first be held very firmly. If something crumbles, it crumbles, but resists destruction. Yeah, this is the theory of the lump from King of the Hill. A lump, you can beat the hell out of a lump, but it just stays being a lump. It doesn't matter. It's like water. You can hit the water, it's still water. Something crumbles, it crumbles, but it's not gone. Okay. 92. The first case of idolatry was surely fear of things, and therefore also fear of the necessity of things, and therefore also of responsibility for them. This responsibility seems so vast that people didn't even dare to lay it at the feet of a single divine being, because the intervention of one such being would not sufficiently lighten the weight of human responsibility. The negotiation with one being would have remained too much stained with the responsibility, and therefore each thing was given the responsibility for itself, or more, the things were also given a measure of responsibility for the human. Okay, so yeah, it's just that the world is hard, and we got to break it up into pieces. That's fair. But it got so hard that we couldn't even deal with little bits, and we had to get idols for everything. Yeah, it's too much responsibility. Because, I mean, how do you even take responsibility for, like, this beer I just drank? I mean, innumerable things had to happen that went into this object. And so, what is the ultimate responsibility with this glass, this manufactured thing? Who knows? Hey, number 93. No psychology ever again. Okay. Two tests of the beginning of life: to keep reducing your circle, and to keep making sure you're not hiding somewhere outside of it. Okay, so earlier, much earlier, was Kafka mentioned, like, sort of to know yourself is like to have dominion over yourself. Power is to sort of circumscribe yourself in, like, so the sort of spheres of influence that you have, what you can do. Two tests of the beginning of life: to keep reducing your circle, to sort of keep pulling in with the things you have power over, to think you think you have big power. No, you have little power, but you at least have that. And to keep making sure you're not hiding somewhere outside of it, and so you can't run from your what you have control over. So, okay, that makes some sense. 95. Evil is sometimes like a tool in your hand, recognized or unrecognized. You are able, if you have the will to do it, to set it aside without being opposed. Yeah. I think this is interesting in some sense, like the transition talk with evil earlier. Like, there's a part of the world that starts to break down, and then evil sort of, that's how we sort of recognize evil, when things start to break down in ways we can't quite control, but it's still in the world, in our world, and it's like in our hand. And so you have to, if you're able and the will to do it, you can not do that bad thing, and it will just not And because it's a transitional period anyway, it's like there's nothing stopping you. There's no force that's going to stop you from not, no force that's going to stop you from not being evil. Because it's, as he was saying earlier, in this sort of scheme, evil's an illusion. And so if you can just have the understanding enough, then it just is, you can just not do it. 96. I think I'll go to 100, or yeah, I'm almost at 2 hours now. So just a few more minutes and a few more aphorisms. 96. The joys of this life are not its joys, but our fear of climbing into a higher life. The torments of this life are not its torments, but our self-torment on account of this fear. Okay, so the joys of this life are not the joys of life, but our fear of climbing into a higher life. So these are our joys in some sense, not the joys of life, but our fear of climbing into a higher life. The torments of this life are not its torments, not the torments of life, but our self-torment. We're doing it to ourselves on account of the fear. Why are the joys of life our fear of climbing into a higher life? I don't know. I'm not really sure of that one. If anyone out there has anything has any smart things to say about that one, I'd like to know, because it's kind of interesting, but I don't get it. 97. Only here is suffering really suffering, not in the way that those who suffer here are to be ennobled in some other world for their suffering, but that what passes for suffering in this world is, in another world, without any change and merely without its contrariety, bliss. Okay. Only here is suffering really suffering. Alright, so again, this is keeping the focus on this world. Like our world, it's not, this is where the suffering is suffering, because in any other world it could just be bliss. So we have to understand the suffering in some sense as a very world-based thing, and very much our world. Because in some other world it doesn't matter. Alright. 98. The conception of the infinite plenitude and expanse of the universe is the result of taking to an extreme a combination of strenuous creativity and free contemplation. Oh, okay. Physics. The contemplation of an infinite plenitude and expanse of the universe. An extreme combination of strenuous creativity and free contemplation. Yeah. That's fine. Maybe he's sort of criticizing that, though. It's like, because maybe these things are sort of ridiculous, and so you're just sort of overthinking it. I don't know. 99. How much more oppressive than the most implacable conviction of our current state of sin is even the feeblest contemplation of the once eternal justification for our ephemerality. Only the strength fixed in bearing the second conviction, which is in its purity completely encloses the first, is the measure of faith. What? How much more oppressive than the most implacable conviction of our current state of sin is even the feeblest contemplation of the once eternal justification for our ephemerality. Okay, so in other words, why are we thinking why are we trying to justify our, like, basically that we come and we go so much? Like, why are we even bothering to contemplate? And the conviction of yeah, so the fact that we're trying to figure out our ephemerality is just silly. Only the strength fixed in bearing the second conviction, I guess the justification for our ephemerality, which in its purity completely encloses the first, that we have our sin, that we are our current state of sin, so that we are ephemeral, but there's, because of the state of sin, is the measure of faith. Okay, so that does make some sense. After parsing it, it's that in some sense, in trying to understand our ephemerality, then we try to that encloses our understanding of sin. And that's how we understand faith, that in our sort of finite ephemeral lives we still have something that reflects back to the original sin, and that's where our faith is. Okay. It's getting hard at this point to think. Okay, there are some who assume that next to the great original deception, another smaller deception was practiced specifically for them. It's as if when a romantic comedy is performed on stage, the actress, in addition to the lying smile for her beloved, keeps a further, particularly cunning smile for a certain spectator in row Z. That is going too far. I agree with this. This is sort of funny. They think they're special and that they have some sort of spark of something, and that the stripper really does want to go out with you. Like that smile that they're putting out there, no, that's really for you. I mean, he says romantic comedy. I'll just say stripper because that's sort of the more contemporary joke. But it's that cunning smile is really for you. No, that's going too far. We're not that special. 100. It is possible to know of the devilish but not to believe in it, because there is no more devilishness than exists anyway. What? It is possible to know of the devilish but not to believe in it, so you can know but not believe in it, because there is no more devilishness than exists anyway. Okay, so there is devilishness in the world, I guess, but you wouldn't say that you believe in the devilishness. It's just part of the world, but not like a special part of the world. It's just part of reality, but there is no unique devilish thing. Okay, I'll grant them that one. 101. Sin always comes openly and in a form apprehensible to the senses. It walks on its roots and doesn't need to be plucked out of the ground. Yeah, I mean, I think the old Judeo-Christian notion of sin is that it has to be taken on with like full knowledge that it's sin, and so it wouldn't be like proper sin otherwise. But it is interesting because it comes openly and in a form apprehensible to the senses. So in some sense, you have to just be able to recognize it. The senses can see sin in that case, which is interesting. All right, I'm gonna cut off, I think, one more, and then that's it. We'll get to 102. Actually, no, I'm going to go to 109 because I like that. 109. I didn't think I was going to get there, but because I'm almost there anyway, I'm going to go to 109. Feel free to ask questions. I don't know how sane I am at the moment, but we're trying. 102. All the sufferings we occasion must also suffer. We don't all share one body, but we do share growth, and that leads us through all pain, whether in this form or that. As the child goes through all its phases and becomes old and dies, and every stage seems unattainable to those before, whether from desire or from dread, we develop, no less connected to the others than to ourselves, through all the sufferings of the world. There is in this context no room for justice, and not for fear of suffering either, or for the presentation of suffering as merit. Okay, so this is again the universalization of human experience. All the sufferings we occasion must also suffer. So this is the suffering is just it's a universal in self. We don't share one body, but we share the growth and all of the things that go into growing up. And so, and sometimes we've all had the same growing pains, in one way or another. Okay, and in this context, there's no room for justice. The pain, in some sense, and not for fear of suffering either, for the presentation of suffering as merit. Like, you don't get credit for your growing pains. There's no justice to those, like, growing pains. You don't learn it. Like, you're not going to get, like, a remuneration for having growing pains. Okay. 103. You can withdraw from the sufferings of the world. That possibility is open to you and accords with your nature. Perhaps that withdrawal is the only suffering you might be able to avoid. Yeah, you can withdraw from the suffering of the world. That possibility is open to you and accords with your nature. But perhaps that withdrawal is the only suffering you might be able to avoid. Yeah. So it's saying even if you withdraw from the world, the only one you can escape is the one that you've actually taken on. So you're just walking into the rake right there. You think you're getting away from everything, but in trying to run away from the world, that is the only you're going to guarantee yourself that suffering. And if you didn't run, that was the only suffering you might have been able to avoid. So that's an interesting concept. 104. Man has free will, and of three sorts. First, he was free when he wanted this life. Now, admittedly, he cannot take back his decision because he is no longer the one who wanted it then. He must do his own will then by living. Second, he is free inasmuch as he can choose the pace and the course of his life. Third, he is free in that the person he will one day be, he has the will to go through life under any condition and so come to himself on some path of his own choosing, albeit sufficiently labyrinthine that it leaves no little spot of life untouched. This is the triple nature of free will, but being simultaneous, it is also single, and in fact so utterly single that there is no room for a will at all, whether free or unfree. Free will always confused me in general. Alright, so you're free when you wanted this life, so you can't take it back, but you got yourself into whatever life you got yourself into. Second, you can then choose the pace and course of how that goes. And third, he has the will to go through life under any condition. So you can be himself, or you can act yourself through it or do something else. And so you can it depends also, not the pace and course, but so much how much you experience in that life. Okay. So you've got the choice of life, and then how sort of hard you go at it, and then how much of it you experience, like how fast you go. That's interesting. 105. The seductiveness of this world and the sign that warrants its transitoriness are one and the same, and rightly so, because only in this way can the world seduce us in accord with the truth. The grievous thing that after falling victim to the seduction, we forget the warranty, and so the good has led us into evil, the woman's smile has led us into the bed with her. Him and making women evil, that's not nice, but okay. So the seductiveness of this world and the sign that warrants its transitoriness are one and the same. So that which makes the world transitory is what we like about the world. It seduces us. And only in this way, because it can and accord with truth, because it is transitory, that is its truth, and that's how it must be. Okay, and so now he's just angry about it, though. I'm not so sure why he's angry about it. I mean, did women mess him up? What happened there? The grievous thing is that after falling victim to the seduction, that the world is transitory and we fall into that. We forget the warranty. What warranty? I don't know. And so the good has led us into evil, the transition into some sort of like maybe religious sort of guarantee. And so the good has led the good of the world into transitoriness has led us into evil, and the woman's smile has led us into bed with her. I don't see what your problem is with going to bed with people, Kafka. 106. Humility gives everyone, even the lonely and the desperate, his strongest tie to his fellow men. Immediately and spontaneously too, albeit only if the humility is complete and lasting. It does so because it is the language of prayer and is both worship and tie. The relationship to one's fellow man is a relationship of prayer. The relationship to oneself is the relationship of striving. Out of prayer is drawn the strength with which to strive. Okay, so that's actually kind of nice. This is how we are connected to others in some sense. Humility is sort of a method, because it's a prayer. There's a relationship of prayer is the humility. And so that's an interesting concept of how that works. I'm sure the theologians and stuff have much more to say about this. I don't know any of that, but it's an interesting way to do it. In some sense, humility, you could also say charity to everyone else. And that's how you can tie yourself to everyone else, by being humble and giving them the best, putting their work in the best possible light, because that's the only way you're going to understand how they're going to see you too. And that's going to show the relationship of one's fellow man. The relationship of prayer to oneself is a relationship to striving to reach out to others, and then to both worship and tie, to get yourself tied to everyone, and to understand sort of what it is to be humble anyway. Continuing. Can you know anything that is not deception? Once deception was destroyed, you wouldn't be able to look at the risk of turning into a pillar of salt. Again with the biblical references. Alright, so you can't turn around and look at the Sodom and Gomorrah at the risk of turning into salt. Can you know anything that is not deception? Can you know anything that is not illusion? And once you destroy it, it's the destruction of the illusion will destroy us just the same. Fair enough, but maybe we need to be destroyed. Maybe Lot's wife had the right way. I don't know. 107. Everyone is very friendly to A, in roughly the way one might seek to protect an excellent billiard cue even from good players. until the Great One comes along, takes a good look at the table, will tolerate no precocious mistakes, and then, when he starts playing, rampages in the wildest way. This guy's pissed off at this A person. But it's kind of funny. It's like you want to like keep something all like nice and good for like the perfect person, and then when they come along and everything looks perfect, they act like a complete jackass and start rampaging. Yeah. It's like an excellent billiard cue. So you've got like a one really good cue, like one really good tool, and you're like, well, no one can use. Oops, sorry. And you're like, no one can. I got this pop filter. Maybe I shouldn't have got this one. Kind of makes that a nice, fun sound though when I hit it. You've got a really nice tool, and like no one can use it except when the person comes along and you think they're the perfect person. Like, oh, finally someone who merits the perfect tool, and then they're a complete jackass. 108. And then he went back to his job as though nothing had happened. A sentence that strikes one as familiar from any number of old stories, though it might not have had appeared in any of them. You know, this seems like this is exactly right. This could appear in any book, at any time, at any place, in anywhere. Like nowadays, and then coronavirus, and then he went back to his job as though nothing had happened. And that could just be in any, like, paper on the face of the earth right now. Talking about somebody, blah, 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 and then Trump went back to his job as though nothing had happened. He said something weird on Twitter, and he went back to his job as though nothing had happened. The coronavirus just killed somebody, and then he went back to he killed his, like, spouse, and then he went back to the job as though nothing had happened. It's like, that's an interesting thing. Because this is sort of the opposite of, and this too will pass, and it's just sort of the depressing version of it. And then he went back to his job. I mean, being Kafka and with the understanding of bureaucracy, it's like this is where we're at. You're stuck in this sort of job mentality that you can't escape it. Oh, where was I going? 109 or 110? Oh, this is not where I thought I was going to be. Oh well, maybe it was a little farther on. 109. It cannot be claimed that we are lacking in belief. The mere fact of our being alive is an inexhaustible font of belief. The fact of our being alive, a font of belief, but what else can we do but live? It's in that what else that the immense force of belief resides. It is the exclusion that gives it its form. Okay, so now we're getting back to sort of the metaphysics of belief here. The mere fact of being alive is an inexhaustible font of belief. And so belief is tied to being alive. As part of being alive is to be believing in things of some sort. But then if it's being believed, it's necessary, then what else can we do but to believe, in what does it actually count? And so in that sense, it's like, yes, but there's so much more that we don't have to be alive, or we could believe very different, we could live very differently, and that's where the force of belief resides. We could have very different forms of life, and this sort of exclusion, we're choosing this form of life over that form of life, or not even being alive, that's where the belief that's where the force of the belief is, that we've somehow crafted these beliefs actually really matter, because they are referring back to the sort of form of life and everything else that form of life includes and excludes. Okie dokie. Oh, this is where I was trying to get to. It isn't necessary that you leave home. Sit at your desk and listen. Don't even listen, just wait. Don't wait, be still and alone. The whole world will offer itself to you to be unmasked. It can do no other. It will writhe before you in ecstasy. And this is why I was using this quote in a paper I was writing, because it seems like a very, 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 very different take on things than I think I've seen most everywhere else. It says you don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to do anything, it doesn't matter. The world will writhe before you in ecstasy. You can just sit there and don't even wait. Just sit. Just be still. Don't just and alone. You don't have to do anything, and all of a sudden the world will somehow open itself up before you. How? But everyone else sort of says well, you have to do a work, you have to go do something. In the aphorisms before, he said you have to go be among humanity. Even he was saying that stuff before, and all of a sudden this is completely going the other direction. You don't have to do shit. In fact, don't even do shit. Do less than shit. Just be still and be alone, and and the world will just do something. It will offer itself to you to be unmasked. You don't even have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. And so this is a very, very, very different thought. than basically every other sort of thing that requires, like, just don't do anything, and all of a sudden it will still, it can do no other. Yeah, this is a bit more of a famous, one of the more famous aphorisms from this book. I've seen it a few times, and I quite like it because it just seems like a really I'm sure other people have said things like it. I just don't know where they are, and I haven't seen them. Hey, Bewitched Frog. Yeah. It isn't necessary that you leave home. Like, I'm sitting in this room. Don't have to go anywhere. Don't have to do anything. Just sit at your desk and listen. Don't even listen. Just wait. You don't even have to wait. You're not waiting for anything. Don't wait. Be still alone. The whole world will offer itself to you to be unmasked. It can do another. It will rise before you in ecstasy. You don't have to wait. It's just going to happen right now. Like, there's nothing else to do except be still and alone. Yeah. I don't know. But, like, it's just such a different concept that, like, why is the stillness and aloneness? Why does that do it? And what is it to offer itself to you to be unmasked? I don't know. It can do no other. It's a necessary thing on the world. It's necessary to show itself to you. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. Okay. And and that was it. I think that's it. And Kafka spent 8 months in Zurau, in the Bohemian countryside, at his sister's outlaws house between September 1917 and 1918. So I guess this is the big old kicker. I didn't think I was going to get through all of them. Wait, are there even more, or is this just... Yeah, this is all... I guess context here. Okay, so that's it. We got through all of them. I did not expect to do it, but I did. I completely forgot that this was all that there were, though. So... Anybody have any comments? I don't know. I just decided to do something a little different today because, I'm trying to always figure out how to actually do philosophy online. It seems very hard because everything we do at the moment is just sort of like just an online version of the in-person philosophy. So I figured I'd read some aphorisms and talk about them. So, any comments, questions? Otherwise, I'm going to head off to bed. It is actually 1:20 in the morning here. But thank you for coming by. Appreciate all the comments and you guys stopping by. So thank you all. And have a fantastic night. And stay safe out there. What do you, think of conceptual engineering? Bewitched Frog, I have not looked at it enough, actually. I've seen it, and it's one of those things like, if I had more time, I'd go read more on it. But I do not, I just have not got enough of the, I just haven't looked at it enough. I'm trying to remember what little I knew about it, right now. No, I don't have anything sensible to say at the moment. I wish I did. I mean, I know there's stuff online you can go, like, read up, and if you think it's cool, I mean, go for it, of course, but, I don't know. I just don't know. So, it's one of those, like, oh, looks like they're doing some, like, cool, like, applied philosophy stuff. I was like, that looks great. It's like, do I have time to go do more random stuff? Maybe, but not right now. I don't know. Yeah, let's see. What else is in this book? This book here is just for the people that weren't here at the start. This is the Zurau Aphorisms, more recent, sort of from 2006 by Franz Kafka. Yeah, introduction afterward. Translated from German by Michael Hoffman. Yeah, so there's a 2006 or whatever version of these aphorisms, and as was mentioned earlier, they can all be gotten in the original German. They're all free online. Yeah, and if you need a copy of the book, that's also available. This copy of this book is available somewhere online. If you really need to know, just send me an email. I'll send you the copy. But yeah, have a good night, y'all, and thank you for being here, and sleep tight and be safe out there.